screen, color dodge, linear dodge, any of these, even, well, some of these are worse than others, but the lighten or screen is probably going to be the one that I would use, because what that does is that it knocks out anything that's black. So anything from black to 50% gray gets knocked out. You're left with everything from 50% gray going into white. That's how the light and blend modes work. So that way I get that. Now, difference between lighten and screen. If you look, see, the lights here are over top of everything. So when I change the blend mode to lighten, it does the knockout, and it's kind of very subtle, but it applies a reflection on like a light, um, what they call light leaks, or basically light being applied on top of your objects underneath this layer. If I do screen, it's just more of it, so it's just a more intense version. So depending on what you're doing with your overall project, one is going to work probably better than the other when you're looking at it. Linear dodge is another one that's kind of cool to use. It's kind of like screen. Linear dodge and screen almost look alike in some cases, but it just depends. Lighter color and lighten sometimes look the same in some cases. Like in this case, I can go back and forth between linear dodge and screen, and I don't really see much of a difference. A little bit of change of intensity, but that's about it. Same thing with lighten and lighter color. Not that big of a difference, but it depends on what you're dealing with. Depends on what comes out. So I want to go to screen here for now, and because I kind of like that, I can still move this around. And if I move it down, I can see that line where the picture ends. I can see how it's, leaking and only going so far. So I want to make sure that this stadium lights here kind of off to the side, almost off the screen with the lights themselves. I just want the light leak to happen, as I call it, the light leaks. And I'm using that term light leaks because you will find online people selling or giving away free a bunch of different lighting overlays like this, where it's sunlight or a spotlight or reflected light off of other things that you can throw on top of your picture to produce these little specular highlights going on. And it just so happens that, the big bright spot there on his football helmet, and in fact that the lights was coming from, this left hand side of him, the left hand side of this screen. It kind of adds on to the reflection and the light that is bouncing off of other things that bounces on the helmet. So it kind of works out on him, showing this. So that's just gratuitous or using what's already here. All right, and I got that part done. So that's cool. I'm gonna leave that there, and I'm just gonna lock it again to get it in place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the field layer, unlock it, and I'm going to paint some more on this layer mask. Because now that I have this light streaking on here, some of the lighting that was there before, I could probably bring some of it back. And again, you want to make sure that you're using that very soft round brush. And you could go with an opacity change. So that way, even though you're painting back this, you're not painting it back at 100%. So I would turn the opacity down, by some, and how much is going to be completely up to you. But I'd probably start in the 40s or 50s and painting with white as my top color to paint back some of the details that were lost. You don't want to paint back too much because I don't really want the big bright light spot to come back there unless that's what you wanted. Um, and I don't want to have the line that is the end of that little defined line that shows the end of the picture. No, I don't want that to come back. But if you paint at that gradual small percentage, you can gradually bring some of the lights back that I painted away, and some of that smeary, streaky lighting that was there. You got to bring some of it back, for effect or anything like that. And again, this is just me showing you what can possibly happen to help blend things together. So I'm just lowering the percentage and having less of that over here on this side and more of it on the other side, making sure I'm painting that little seam away. And I'm doing a couple of click and drags in a couple of different spots just to make sure that what I'm doing actually looks right and works right. And again, I could be here all day because this is one of those things with the details that you can get bogged down into, going back and forth between the different layers and, like, turning visibility on and off, transforming and scaling and, doing these different things to try to get this to look like this big, huge light source was part of this picture when the picture was taken. And of course, it's not that, but you can get something that looks that way. Just simple uh, blend modes with the lights layer here, layer masking with the other layers, to kind of get what you want out of this. And it's starting to look like I want from a magazine cover. Now, other layers to play with. Again, I want to go with one of those textured layers there. So on my computer, come on, file open on my computer. So now this background final picture here is just this texture that I can overlay on top. And then this one here with this hexagon pattern, this is another one that you can overlay on top. Whichever one you want to use, it's kind of the same situation. You would open the file up. Once you get the file open, you would transfer, that pattern or that overlay. Oh, oops, I told it to delete. That's not what I want to do. Duplicate, not delete. Transfer it over to the other file like we've been doing. And once you got it transferred over, you don't need the file anymore. So now that's transferred over. Now this one with the hexagon pattern is already transparent, in between the hexagon shapes. It's already this transparent space there. The problem that you're going to probably run into because you got these transparent holes is when you're trying to select and move. If you try to go in between one of these transparent spaces, it's trying to select what's underneath and not the actual transparent area. Notice I'm zoomed out because when I hover over the right spot on one of the lines of this transparent, hexagon shape, I noticed that you get like this little blue framing that goes around the whole picture of this layer. That indicates to me that now I can move the whole entire thing around. Um, that's just one of those things with some of these overlays you'll run into where you got this transparency thing going on and it's kind of hard to get to, to grab the thing that needs to be moved because there's nothing in between these. It's just that transparent space. Now I'm going to change the stack order because I don't want it on him. I actually want it underneath, the lights and underneath him. And then I want to turn the opacity, play with that a little bit. Yeah, this one for lighter color, because what it's doing is not, it's applying that hexagon to the background behind everything. That's what it looks like. It's just not applying it as much on the field as it is in the background behind there. So I kind of like that. That looks kind of cool. So changing the blend mode to lighter color does that to this hex pattern. So that looks cool. Let me go to grab the texture. Let's see what that looks like. That background file there. Right click, duplicate the layer, transfer it over to Eastern Champs, and then close that up. So now I have this background copy of this texture design here. Let me scale this up a little bit bigger, cover a larger area. It takes that iStock photo, little label out of there. And I can see like maybe this part would look cool. So I hit the check mark for that. Then I start playing with blend mode. So this is up above everything. Let me change the name. I didn't change the name. Uh, Usually something like texture would go good with that. And then changing the blend mode. Now, this is where the experiment comes in. Which blend mode looks the best and not as harsh? Sometimes it'll look good, but it may be a little too harsh for what you want. So not only will you change the blend mode, but you'll probably play with the opacity too, as well. And you may even apply a layer mask to it and paint some parts of it away um, to get an effect. I'm going to show you something else that you can do too. I'm looking at the player right now, kind of like that one. Don't know why, but I kind of dig that. So what I could do is option one, turn the opacity down so it's not as harshly applied. So that way it gets kind of that texturized kind of look. That looks kind of neat and cool. Um, if I want to do that, play with the blend mode and the opacity, you can kind of get things to go with that. Here's another option. There was in the presentation of part one a term that was called a clipping mask that I told you we're going to show you later because a lot of times you would do it to text, but I'm going to show you now because this is a good opportunity to show you what can happen with it. Now, the idea of a clipping mask, it is not a layer mask, but it kind of works that way. You're clipping the contents of one layer into the contents of another. So here's the scenario. I have this texture layer sitting above this 50 layer here. What I want to do is the only parts of this texture layer that I want to see is when it is wherever the 50 picture is sitting. So right now, 50 is the football player here, right? And I want this texture to show up on him, not on anything else. So to do that, um, I'll show you the easiest way to do it without having any extra things that need to be done. You want to stack the two layers above and below each other. So the layer that you want to have as your mask, that's going to be below. So the only parts of this picture that you want to see is the mask thing. The thing that is going to be clipped into that picture, you want to have those layers above. And you could do more than one layer, but you start off with one layer at a time. So on the layer that's going to be clipped into the other one, you right click on it, on that layer, and you will see. Sometimes it's difficult for me to find things in this list. Yeah, create clipping mask. Good Lord, I can't see. Create clipping mask. And when you do that, what ends up happening is this. In the layers palette, that the thumbnail of that layer that you right clicked on, it shifts over to the right. You have this little teeny tiny arrow that points down to the layer below it. The layer below it, the name of that layer is going to be underlined, all right, to indicate that it is the clipping mask. And then the layer above it is going to be what clips into that mask. And you could do this clipping, like once you get the first one done, you can go and right click on other layers above that one that clipped in, and you can keep doing it again with that create clipping mask. And it basically just clips into the base layer, which is the one at the bottom, which is the mask itself. Now, that texture is only showing on my football player now. It's not anywhere else in the picture. That also means that anything that I do to this layer, blend mode change, you know, what was it on linear light, opacity change, is only going to apply to the football player picture and not anything else. Now, why do that? Well, for this texture, it's because I wanted to do that to show you. Do I necessarily need to apply it like this? Probably not, but it's just kind of a thing to show you that could be done, with any layer with any two layers at a time, you can do this particular effect. It's not going to do anything good or bad or anything like that. It's just another option that you have available to you that you can utilize to your advantage if you see something that you want to try to do. And really, this is not doing much. Kind of liked the linear light application. I'm just trying to see if anything else looks just as good. Vivid light looks a little clearer, depending on what I set for that opacity. But I could set the opacity. Sometimes when you create these textures like this and you overlay it with this clipping mask like this, the texture is going to be real light. Like this is at like 22% or 20%, just to get a small little bit of texture floating on my picture. And why did I do that? Again, because I felt like doing it. It's nothing special or spectacular that's going to make this, some over the top thing. It's just I want to do it. So you got options. Just is what I'm getting at here. So you got a clipping mask. So that's how the clipping mask works. I'll decide if I want to keep using that or not in that fashion. All right, last thing is that Eastern Division Champions. I want to create that. I want to bring that text in here. It's a file that is not actually text. It's just a picture in the form of those letters. So it's not actually text that I can retype or anything like that. This was created as a file some time ago. And what was text to make this Eastern Division Champions? They did a thing called rasterizing it, which means it turned it from text that could be re-edited to just pixels. And the pixels just make up these shapes here now. Bad thing is I can't re-edit this. I can't retype it. I can't change. I can't do anything to it, but I can treat it like any other picture and do anything like masking or anything else like that to this that I want to. So this Eastern Division Champions, I want to take this and transfer it over. I'll just call it text, or actually champ text. How about that? That champ text. That sounds better. I want it to go to that Eastern Champs file. And again, once I got it transferred over and close that up, this Eastern Division Champions, of course, it's sitting up there, but I want to transform this to make this bigger so it covers more of this top section here and maybe pull it down a bit. I'm going to use the arrow keys on the keyboard to kind of nudge it down, kind of get it to sit maybe right there. Probably even bring it lower. Like probably right there. And now I want my lights to be a little higher up. So I'll take that layer and move it up so that way it's up to the top corner. There'll probably be the name of the magazine, going higher up, but this, which is Eastern Division Champions part, have that sitting probably about right there. Because this layer is underneath my lights layer, of course, the light effect, is applied to these letters at the same time. Because again, working its way down through all the layers. Now, for Eastern Division Champions, I need an effect to happen. And this is, you've seen this with magazines especially, and you've seen it probably in other type of media where a building or a person looks like they're walking through letters or something like that, or that, it's like the letters are intertwined with that person or something of that nature. So I'm going to show you how that works. It's kind of a neat little trick, and all it is just a trick using layer masking. So what I need to do is I need to do a couple of steps, and I'm going to tell you what the steps are before I actually do it. So step number one is making the layer mask on this champion's text layer. Then I'm going to take the shape of his arm and load that on as a selection. So I get the marching ants around there. So when I start painting the letters away with the masking, I'm only painting within where his arm is sitting. All right, and you're going to see what I'm talking about when I'm doing this. So first thing is taking this champ text layer with nothing selected, and I'm going to make a new layer mask that, of course, is going to be blank. There's nothing there at all. Now, if I went to my paintbrush tool and started to paint, and let's say I wanted to paint this N and the O that's on top of his arm and paint it away, I could do so. Let me turn this opacity back up. I can do so, but when I start getting over here towards the edge, if I go a little too far, now, oops, I got to bring things back. And that becomes kind of an annoyance to have to do that because it just takes longer. So what's an easy solution? Well, I already have this layer mask down here on the 50 layer that is the silhouette of this person's arm. So if I hold down my control or my command key on my keyboard and move my cursor on top of a layer mask that already has the black and white layer mask on, my cursor changes to what looks like a hand pointing with a square underneath it. And what that allows me to do with a click, it loads the marching ants of that layer mask on. So basically, the white areas of the layer mask become a selection. And so I get the marching ants going around my football player again. And the only parts that I can paint now on this champ text layer is what's in between there. So now this allows me to have a little easier time of painting over top of this N and this O, to take that out, to bring his hand in front of champions. And it's a clean cut because the selection that I made to make this silhouette, to make this mask on the 50 layer, is a clean cut. So that's how that works out. So if you have that, use it to your advantage. So now it looks like his hand is going over top of champions, but underneath division. So that's where you get that look. That's how that happens. It's a simple masking trick. And it works very, very well. And again, without the marching ants sitting there like I had, it'd be a little more difficult to make sure that right at the edges of your um, area you want to mask away, right at those edges, it'd be a little rougher in the look. You could zoom in closer, use a hard edge brush, and do all these other things, but why when there's another option that could work just as easily and just as well? So I wanted to bring that up to show you that. Now, here comes the downside. If I end up moving Eastern Division champions around, all right, the mask moves along with it. So then that gap is showing there. So now I don't have that same kind of illusion that was going on. Now, is that a problem? Well, no, because there's one other option that you can do. If you look at any layer that's masked, you're going to see this little chain link that is between the color thumbnail and the mask. I have it here as well for Eastern Division champions and the mask here. That chain link links the mask and the color thumbnail together. So if you move one or transform one, you're transforming the other or moving the other. If I click on that chain link to turn it off, now what ends up happening is if you transform or move one, the other doesn't move along with it. So I have to make sure I'm deliberately clicking on the thing that I want to move. So now if I click on the Eastern Division Champions thumbnail, the layer thumbnail of that, now use my move tool to grab and move it around, what ends up happening is wherever I move the picture to, say if I move it to the left or the right, I still get that same illusion. And now if I go up or down, it kind of messes with the illusion a bit because I didn't paint all the way through the character, only in that little spot right there. So, it kind of messes up the illusion and the magic and stuff. But if I go left to right, Champions is always behind his hand. Because what's happening is I'm moving the text, that picture, but I'm not moving the mask at all. The mask is staying exactly where it is. It's a cool little trick, especially if you got to reposition, something like this, and you don't want to start all over again. It's kind of a neat thing to be able to do. Just make sure that if you do that, go back and turn the chain link back on once you get yourself settled, because you will run into the situation where you will do that, make the move, everything's great, and then you'll forget to turn the chain link back on, and then you have to come back and then move the whole thing, and then you're like, why is everything disappearing? Because you forgot. So try to just get in the habit of, if you do something like turn that chain link off, make your adjustment and then go back right back immediately and turn the chain link back on. So that way it looks right, like it needs to be. All right, that's it. I just wanted to show you this in this format here. This is all I wanted to show you here with this. So what did we do? We got layers that have layer masking applied. One is kind of the standard thing that we did before, where we made a selection, went into select and mask, cleaned it up, and then did the layer masking as we needed to. The other masking was a little more manual, where we just made the mask with nothing selected and then started painting on it to get the selective adjustments that we need to get the result that we want. We looked at this lights layer here and just changed the blend mode of that, to whatever we wanted to. And that helped to get the effect going. Same thing with the texture layer and this hex pattern, changing the blend mode and changing the stack order of the layers to get everything to give me the effect that I was aiming for or hoping for to get. For this texture layer here, right clicking on it to create a clipping mask, we'll take the layer that's directly below this texture layer and turn that into the mask, where the only parts of that texture layer I'm seeing is what's showing through that picture below it. Because this picture is masked like it is, the only part that I'm seeing is where the football player is. And then I can play with the blend mode and opacity to make it subtle, not very obvious in comparison to what it used to be, or what it was by default. In combination with all of these things, you get the final result, and it gets kind of cool. Now let's talk about what we're going to do